and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And hello, K-Man, and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and as my colleague says, welcome to Straight Talk. Number to call here up in the studio if you want to get in, 745-2626. 745-2626, and he's smiling. Give us that WhatsApp number. Come on.
928-2562. And from there, of course, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message, and we will read and air both live during our on-air discussion. Happy Wednesday, not Thursday. I'm getting ahead of myself. Happy Wednesday, Ellio. Trust you had a successful, productive afternoon.
It was a rather relaxing day, if I might say so. I mean, yesterday was just like totally hectic, but today was pretty relaxed. I mean, I still got a schedule, you know?
Yeah.
Reasonably relaxed.
Well, I'm still receiving feedback from yesterday's discussion with Mr. Alan Chastanet. Wow, what another groundbreaking and informational discussion. I think a number of those comments are worthy of replay, and I guess my challenge will be, as usual, trying to find 20 seconds out of that fantastic conversation that we can use.
It's a tough job, Austin.
It's a tough job.
But it's one thing I know. If anyone can handle it, it's you. And he laughs because he says, you're probably right.
You're probably right. But flattery will get you everywhere, so that works as well.
No, but it's true.
No, man. Listen, and so too is true with getting that guest as, in studios.
Not every day you get the prime minister,
It's not every day you get the prime minister of another Caribbean jurisdiction as your guest in studios. And not just any prime minister. Again, a prime minister, leader of the opposition, former minister of tourism, former minister of finance and job creation and economic development. Clearly somebody who was qualified to have a discussion on the future of cruise tourism, but overall the issue of tourism in the Cayman Islands. He gave us a number, when you say us, he gave our country a number of compliments suggesting the Cayman Islands have been leaders in the region. And he also validated the claims that other Caribbean regions, in particular their leadership, are watching the actions of the Cayman Islands and using it perhaps as a guidepost. I'm sure many of them, like our guest yesterday, are hoping that the voters who go to the polls on April 30th to answer the referendum questions, but in particular the question on cruise berthing, I'm sure they are hoping that, voters answer in the affirmative and make the right choice. But I also can't help but, appreciate that whilst they do envy, if not admire, the Cayman Islands position, we're all in competition in the region, and should the Cayman Islands decide no is the way to go, obviously other jurisdictions, not least of which would be St. Lucia, would be drawing as benefactors of our own loss, and that would be, well, it'd be great for St. Lucia, terrible for us.
Yeah, well, again, everyone would argue benefit if we were to lose it all. The numbers got to spread somewhere. Yeah. But what I really want to mention again, I think is worthy to reiterate. I think he made a lot of awesome comments yesterday, but the two I like, other than him just simply being a fan, is for us to just recognize that here is a person who was the prime minister of a country that's arguably, at least 3 times
at least
the size of the Cayman Islands.
240 square miles, I think he said.
Yeah, 240 something. And
compared to our 76.
70 plus, right? Yeah. So when you actually look at this and knowing the position he's had, I think it is a wonderful breath of fresh air and I think a real ego booster amongst other things, but in a good way, that here is a person that was in that position that can say, I want you to know, we're looking at you all from a distance and we admire what you're doing.
Correct.
And we admire your success.
Yes.
And looking at your success is a motivation for us because it's not something that we're just imagining. Here's a country, a little small country, by the way, 3 times smaller,
Yep.
that has done it,
Yes.
and it inspires them to say we can do it too. So I think that was one of the things that I really loved about the conversation. And then the other one was the fact that how did you get there?
Mm-hmm.
And from his external view, looking at this country and saying you got there because over the decades, the Cayman Islands, the Caymanian people have been sitting there and making their decisions evidence-based.
Yep.
It is a matter, and I also remember reading something, coincidentally, I have to find that page in the late Sir Vassal Johnson's book, Sir Vassal Johnson. But it was a similar thing that he basically said that has led to the success.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, Mr. Johnny come lately from St. Lucia, as much as we love him, but both saying the same thing. Evidence-based is what has made us successful, making those decisions based on the evidence, not on emotion.
Right.
And again, that was a wonderful statement. I want to thank him for those two statements.
No, absolutely.
And encourage us to continue along that vein. Let's not get dragged away with emotions. Let's get the facts, let's get the figures, and make our decisions evidence-based.
No, absolutely. The one that continues to stick out for me, and you're absolutely right, that there were many of them, but I, pointed to it yesterday, was the fact that despite the ongoing, patting oneself on the back that financial services makes such a large contribution to the overall country's GDP, and by all means they do, we're not certainly suggesting there's anything wrong with that or that's incorrect. But again, the point that he remarked on at least twice, and that being that, without tourism, without our hotels, without our restaurants, financial services and their clients wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
They're not just here to, open a bank account per se and then leave.
Mm-hmm.
They're here or spend some money, stay in a hotel, enjoy the beaches, enjoy some of the amenities. And that, of course, also encourages them to,
Yep.
Make other investments, whether it be buying property, et cetera, et cetera. But without tourism, and that also extends the opportunity to cruise tourism, financial services would be a non-entity.
It wouldn't exist. I mean, if you think about it, just imagine if you could picture just going to this rocky island, there's nothing there, one or two buildings on it,
Yep.
and just ask yourself, is this where I'm going to put my $100 million?
You wouldn't have a huge bit of confidence there.
It wouldn't strike you as the right place, even if it was.
That's right.
And so I think even that kind of visual, I think, helps us to appreciate that it is the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make the argument and continue to make it that, again, from a cruise tourism perspective, it is a foundational situation, because a lot of what your stayovers and your locals are enjoying is as a result of the cruise tourism.
Absolutely.
And again, I give you nothing more than, say, Turtle Center. Nothing we love more as locals than eating our turtle meat, enjoying it. We've also got the attraction. But why is it there? In large part because 60% of the revenues are coming from cruise tourism.
No, absolutely.
And you can't lose that without losing a lot of the that particular attraction. What is it? CTC.
Yes.
I can't even find
what that does is it continues to validate what obviously our forefathers knew from the beginning and the hard work they put in. The Cayman Islands were established and continue to be propped up by two financial pillars, and that is, of course, banking or financial services and tourism. The two are mutually exclusive. You usually won't end up with one without the other. And should you lose one, well, it's only a matter of time before perhaps the other chip will fall, so to speak. And it's important that we maintain this, and it's important for our listeners that they hear it from the perspective of someone else who doesn't have a horse in this race.
Right.
Yesterday we heard from the former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, obviously talking about the value of tourism, the value of cruise tourism, the opportunity that Cayman places it is poised to position itself for. Yeah, there's some difficult decisions that need to be made, but certainly if you look at the bigger picture, there is more positive than there is negative.
Yeah.
And again, when I think of the environmentalists and their legitimate concern about the fear of any potential damage to the environment, again, this isn't your old mom and pop's quote unquote Meisner Marine proposal that I understood was being, shared during their recent CPR meeting, suggesting that, trying to mislead, I dare say, listeners, that this is the type of construction methodology that is being proposed. that's old technology.
Right.
Again, we talk about environmentally friendly marine construction materials that can serve to create marine ecosystems as a result of this necessary modern human infrastructure. So there's that balance. How do we build the things we humans need to survive in our modern economic world whilst also balancing the delicate needs of our marine ecosystem, which obviously lends itself to our tourism product and allows us to market what we do: white sandy beaches, crystal clear waters, and of course, fantastic, some of the best people on the planet. That shows in an unbiased and a very fair way that there is ways to find that delicate balance. There are ways to mitigate against any potential loss. And only the firmest, if not most stubborn of heads won't see that. And again, I'm just delighted that someone else who does not have a horse in this particular race, I know, knock on wood, I heard the echo.
I'm thinking head, coconut.
Coconut head. But somebody else who doesn't have a horse in this race, urging the Cayman Islands and its people to, look past themselves.
Someone who you could say arguably was completely would benefit from your demise.
Oh, without a doubt.
Saying, please do not go that way.
That is a point that I don't think can be underscored enough. St. Lucia, they're Eastern Caribbean, we're Western Caribbean, but make no bones about it. Should we fall away from cruise tourism altogether, it will only benefit the other islands in the region who have invested heavily in this area. And yes, I have to think, because certainly I would think it. You want to wish your competition not well so you can rise. And that doesn't sound very kind and very ethical, but guess what? It's reality. We live in a capitalistic world, and that's how that works. But to your point, he could have taken that position. His countrymen probably do take that position. But to the contrary, he hoped we would do something else because we have been so successful, because we have been leaders in the region, and it would be a shame to lose that. So I'm just grateful for that opportunity. I thought yesterday's conversation was probably one of the best that, and again, we've been in this game for a number of years, but it will certainly, feature in my highlight reel as some of the best that I was privileged to be a part of.
It was a great, awesome conversation. For those who may have missed it, check it out on ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page.
Yes.
And or on YouTube.
Yes.
And I think they're just looking at what? Straight Talk Radio?
Straight Talk Radio Show. And you'll find us on YouTube, Straight Talk Radio Show, for
Instagram.
YouTube and Instagram, and of course also on Facebook, compliments of the ACT Cruise Tourism page.
Yeah, you got to check it out. And of course, we're going to have another great guest in a little bit later on. I'll see if I can give a plug about that.
Well, that's where I was going before. I want to introduce, or I want to preview, if you will, who our guest today will be. But since we're on the subject of cruise, maybe you can share with our listening audience who our guest will be tomorrow.
I had to have a chuckle because I'm just looking at the a bit of the bio, if you like, of the individual, and I'm saying this must be like 2 pages long. So if you don't mind, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, you got 13 minutes. Hope you don't use it all.
No, I'm not gonna use all of this. I'm just going to simply say that for now, until I can summarize this, I don't want to definitely take that much. We're going to have Mr. Gioro Israel here in the studio. I think that's going to be on Thursday, April the 3rd, and it should be an awesome discussion. He has a lot here on the bio, and I just want to say that he's a very well-learned man until I can summarize this bio because it's too much for me to read. But obviously, he has a lot of experience. He's a transformative force in the global cruise industry, widely recognized for his visionary leadership, strategic insight, and pioneering contribution to the port and destination development. So he has a lot of knowledge, and I was just meeting with him today, chatting. The man is full of knowledge.
Okay.
And I think that this is going to be an opportunity for us to really do some fact correction. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can recall me sitting and going through some of the snippets, if you like, of Ms. Dukaran. And I think that, where I think I did a reasonable job, Mr. Harris.
I thought you did.
I wish to say that I think that this gentleman will be able to help us a lot more in terms of getting the facts out. And I think...
So you say you dug the hole, we covered it with soil, planted some flowers, but he came in with the concrete and steel. He can build a vault.
It could be something like that.
Fantastic.
So if I encourage you, we're going to promote it a little bit, but I encourage you to listen up to that. And of course, I think it is tomorrow. We should be having a press conference at the Marriott. And I believe that's around 10 a.m. as well at the Marriott Hotel.
Okay.
So we want to encourage persons to see if they can come out there. Yesterday we have a nice press conference. Again, it's open to the public, of course, to the media.
Yes.
But I want to encourage persons to come out, meet the gentleman, ask some questions, get the facts for yourself. That's all we're asking. You know, we're not stopping people. And by the way, it's open to everyone.
Yeah.
We don't pull the mic away from you like the other group. Welcome to come and ask some questions. Get the facts for yourself. That's all we really want. Get the misrepresentation, the misinformation out of the room, and get to the facts. So as our guest yesterday clearly stated, that you can make an evidence-based decision.
Absolutely.
I had someone, Mr. Harris, just to give an example, I had someone, and I consider him a friend. He said to me, so I'm at the airport. He says, Ellio, you know, I love you and everything, and I've been listening to the talk show about it. You know, I
love it how they set you up with that.
Yeah,
opening.
you know, put the Band-Aid for it to cut your butt. You know, I don't think I'm going to be voting for the port. I said, why not? He says, well, you know, I'm paraphrasing. I can't go through verbatim, but you know, because I listened to Ms. Dukeran. I said, okay, but what did she say that convinced you? The bottom line is I don't remember. So really what happens there, and I want to empathize. I want to empathize because, again, like I stated in one of my things, I too looked from my periphery and just had a lot of respect for the lady and say, hey, you know, I'm assuming a lot of things she's saying are factual. Yeah. But I can tell you that this particular one in cruise tourism, for sure, which I'm more intimately familiar with, there is clearly a lot of omission of information. Not that a lot of the things that are not factual, but a lot of things were missing. As I gave the crude example of someone saying, husband, sweetheart, did you go and look for Mary today? No, darling, I did not. But neglects to tell you that Mary came to look for him. I mean, I hate to give that example, but that is really what you have a lot of in the report. And again, I want to encourage persons to listen to the program. Tomorrow evening, we should be having Mr. Juro Israel here on the program, full of information, full of facts. Get the information so that we can continue this legacy that we have of making great decisions for this country, advancing it, just as mentioned yesterday by our guest. And we can do that simply by making evidence-based decisions and not one based on emotions. So, Mr. Harris, what other good news do you have? Because we have a guest today, don't we?
We do, and we also have at least one comment coming from WhatsApp, which I want to take before talking about today's guest. And that is to say, I also thought, to your point of, you know, allowing all sides to not only benefit from the information, but to question that information, whilst I certainly acknowledge that, like Mr. Chastanet, tomorrow's guest will begin his day with a press conference, or he'll be meeting with the press, and the press themselves will have the opportunity to ask questions and therefore go away and either write their articles or otherwise. But I want to thank you and ACT Cruise Tourism for ensuring that at the very least, well, certainly in the first instance, that we were the exclusive radio offering talk show environment to host that individual. Yeah. And in so doing, open up our phone lines, open up our WhatsApp lines, for anyone, not just those who, you know, are singing from the same hymn book, but perhaps those who may serve a different God to question.
And I'm glad you raised that because, you know, when you did have Ms. Dukeran on again, like whether it was CMR and I even tried, but you couldn't call CMR for sure. The phone lines were blocked or shut off. And it was the same thing with Radio Cayman. Couldn't get through to Radio Cayman. That's not the situation here. We welcome you to call in, get the facts and figures as long as everything is done in a very respectful way. No one should have a problem with you. We want you to get all the facts and make informed decisions. And evidence-based decisions.
Absolutely. And we look forward to doing the same again tomorrow. We do have a WhatsApp voice note. I presume it's on the context of our discussion recapping yesterday. Let's hear what the listener has to say.
Good afternoon, Austin and Ellio. I have to get used to calling you A and E, although again I can't say A and E because that will be understood in a very different way. I enjoyed your discussion yesterday with the former Prime Minister, and it's very interesting to know that actually he went to a school in Quebec some time back. But anyway, the reason I called, I'm recording this, there's this issue which has arisen in relation to the candidacy of a candidate in Bordentown West.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an issue that one of the people who nominated him might not have been a valid elector. Now, I know some people have tried to dismiss that as just politicking, but I think that there is a very important legal issue that has to be raised there. It is possible from my research that Mr. Borden may not be qualified to be a candidate because at the time that he was nominated by one of the people who nominated him, I understand Miss Dorothy Williams, she was not a registered candidate in that district. Because although by then she had changed registration, but under Section 18 of the law, it says that the new list does not come into force, and that's the word used, come into force until the beginning of the next quarter. So technically, she was not qualified to nominate anybody. In fact, even the elections office appear to be saying that they were right. They are actually admitting that it was not noticed at the time. And I think what we need to understand is that their statement just says that, well, we accepted this nomination, but we can't undo it, because under the law, they can ask for the Grand Court to decide certain issues if those issues arise under the Constitution, like qualifications and disqualifications. But since this one doesn't arise under the Constitution, it arises under a different law. This is something which either the Attorney General can use his power under the Attorney General's Reference of Laws Act and take it straight to the Court of Appeal. They can decide it. Or another way is one of the candidates can seek judicial review. But otherwise, there is a real, genuine issue that Mr. Osborne Borden might not be qualified because one of his nominators was not qualified. Genuine issue. I hope that you can discuss it sometime with some of the people interested in issues like this. I thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
We thank you as well for sharing those comments. And of course, he did answer the question towards the end there. Obviously, this was in question raised by Osborne Borden, who was, in fact, nominated at the time. According to what media reports suggest, that one of his nominators was not a registered voter of Bordentown West at the time, but may have been registered in another constituency. I want to say it was Prospect or something like that. And as a result, makes his nomination null and void. But I haven't seen, I did see an article, I think it came out just before the end of March. It said election officials confirmed that the oversight, which was missed on nomination day, had been brought to the Director of Elections, Mr. Wesley Howell. However, since the matter was not noticed on the day itself, officials say there is no means within the law for the supervisor of elections to intervene at this point, which is surprising. I mean, you have an elections law. It has the criteria absolutely right there. Okay, so you may have missed it on nomination day, but you can go back and correct it at any point in time. The law hasn't changed. So to Mr. Samamba's point, this could become an election issue should Mr. Borden be successful at the polls and have his election potentially challenged by his opponents.
I definitely think if it is as we are hearing there and reading, it has to be an election issue. The reason why we have laws is so that they can be followed.
Yes.
Now, you had someone that was removed completely from the election because there was an act of dishonesty way back in the past. So why didn't you just waive that one?
Right.
Because why didn't you check that one out before he actually signed up and got nominated?
Indeed.
Oh, that was an oversight. But why don't you let that one slide?
Yeah.
And then why don't we just let the other one slide of persons who are voting in constituencies and will probably be doing so in this election, even though they're registered somewhere else?
Yes.
You can't willy-nilly, to use our good friends, Mr. McLaughlin's word, you can't just be willy-nilly with the law.
Yes.
It's either it's there to be enforced or not. And that's the problem we have throughout the Cayman Islands is we have laws that's not being enforced.
Indeed.
And with respect to that, I can take two positions. I can say one, personally, I like the national vote, and I really, in a general way, don't care where you get your nominated from as long as they're
Caymanian.
Yeah, Caymanian, and they can vote.
Right.
But that's not the rule. And it has always been the rule, whether we had multi-member constituencies or single member, the persons nominating you have to be registered as a voter in that particular area. This is just black and white. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And I don't understand based on how you can take this position. Surely somebody has to be able to call this to take this to court.
No, absolutely. And I just want to point out, I misspoke. It's not the elections law. It's the Constitution of the Cayman Islands that sets out the eligibility criteria. So there is no higher law in the land. So again, I too join Mr. Samamba in questioning this notion as to why you cannot act after the fact, although it may have been missed or gone unnoticed on nomination day. That should play no significance whatsoever in the situation.
No, let me just say this, right? And I don't want to have to beat up on people unnecessarily, but you really got to ask yourself, why was it overlooked?
Yeah.
There's a list here, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about onboarding or offboarding in a company. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Let's see. You got 2 nominators. What's their name?
Where they from?
Show me your ID.
Yeah.
You know the bank that doesn't want to take your ID because it's expired?
Right.
Okay, well, yeah. Show me that ID. And where was that process?
Right.
How is that overlooked? This is the whole idea of going through to have all these elections officers.
Yes.
Is to go through these processes.
Yes.
So it makes you concerned if that was missed. What's happening when the people go to vote? What else is being overlooked?
What else is being overlooked indeed? 58 minutes past the hour. 4 o'clock is the time in studios. And we have to pause, take a short commercial break. But when we come back, a Caymanian innovator will join us in studios as we engage the subject of food security right here on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today.
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Neil Nunes with the BBC News. President Trump has announced sweeping new tariffs on goods entering the United States from around the world. In a speech in the Rose Garden of the White House, he said the date would be remembered as Liberation Day, when prosperity returned to America.
For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen. We have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore.
The measures include a minimum tax of 10% on all imports, with higher rates for those from trading partners he claimed were ripping off the United States. Mr. Trump also held up a long list of countries that will be hit with higher tariffs. Imports from China will face a 34% tax. Peter Bowes has more from Washington.
In declaring a national emergency, Mr. Trump said it was a response to the conditions created by persistent trade deficits on U.S. goods. he laid out his plan to introduce a baseline 10% tariff, which would apply to the UK, but with higher rates for what an administration official called the worst offenders, including 20% on the European Union, 24% on Japan, and 26% on India. The levies would be reciprocal, meaning they would reflect the tariffs being charged on goods exported from the US, but in some cases, America would charge less.
Governments around the world have been absorbing the contents of Mr. Trump's speech and calculating the likely impact on their economies. Before the announcement, some leaders spoke of retaliating against any U.S.-imposed tariffs, while others advocated a more pragmatic approach and warned against stoking a trade war. Australia said the U.S. tariffs were totally unwarranted. European wine exporters said they expect at least a 20% fall in sales. In other news, the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, is visiting Greenland's capital Nuuk to support the island after President Trump repeatedly said he would like to take control of the semi-autonomous Danish territory. On arrival, Ms. Frederiksen said the U.S. would not take over Greenland and stressed the importance of remaining united.
We need to stand together in this most difficult time. When Greenland is in a difficult situation, so too is the Danish kingdom and Europe. I'm looking forward to the next couple of days. And I want to say to everyone in Greenland that I have only one wish, and that is to do everything I possibly can to take care of this wonderful country.
World news from the BBC. A BBC journalist who has travelled to the largest city near the epicenter of Myanmar's earthquake, Mandalay, says there's a lack of people and resources to cope with the disaster. She said there was no rescue work going on at the site of many collapsed buildings, while hospitals did not have enough staff, blood supplies and medicines. German police say they've shut down one of the world's biggest platforms distributing images of child sex abuse. KidFlix carried over 90,000 still images and thousands of hours of video footage. A spokesman described the operation as possibly the biggest blow ever against this kind of child sexual abuse. Anna Holligan reports from the European Police Agency's headquarters in The Hague.
KidFlix was created in 2021 by a cybercriminal who made a fortune as it rapidly became one of the most popular platforms among paedophiles. By uploading their own images of child abuse, users could earn tokens to view more illegal videos. 79 people have been detained on suspicion of sharing and distributing the images. Some are accused of creating the content themselves. Europol says as a result of the platform being taken down, at least 39 children have been removed from harm.
French media say the main judge who convicted the far-right leader Marine Le Pen is now under police protection and has received threats on social media. On Monday, Ms. Le Pen was convicted of embezzlement, banned from running for office for 5 years, and given a suspended prison term. The American singer Johnny Tillotson, who had a string of hits in the 1960s, has died. He was 86. Tillotson's best-known songs included It Keeps Right On A-Hurtin', which brought him the first of 2 Grammy nominations. But his greatest success was his recording of Poetry in Motion. BBC World News.
Views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, amen, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 on your radio dial and simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. We are back in studios beginning what will be our primary topic of the day, which we were hoping during that break to highlight, but of course we got taken in a different direction, but that's all right.
That's how it goes.
That's how it goes, indeed. Well, you know, we talk about, you know, fantastic guests that are innovators, guests that are certainly high caliber, and this seems to be the week for it. Today, our guest in studios is the principal director of a local company called Primitive Greens, and they believe they have found an innovative and cost-effective solution to the island that could potentially answer the question of food security in the Cayman Islands, and furthermore, possibly even go on to be proof of concept for farms of the future. Our guest in studios, Mr. Kerry Lawrence, Principal Director of Primitive Greens. First of all, welcome to the program. Second of all, tell us about this industrious new Caymanian concept.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I'd like to say hello to the wider Cayman. Well, for those of you who don't know Primitive Greens, we came up with this concept just before COVID, which we looked into food security of Cayman Islands. Because we all know, not only us, but the wider Cayman has an issue. The wider Cayman and Caribbean Islands have issues with food security. We're all in the same boat, basically. Yeah. So we ship everything into the island. So in doing that, we came up with a concept simpler of doing indoor farming innovatively. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for instance, in one of my systems, I can grow 3 acres of food, right, in the size of a shipping container.
Wow.
Okay, so to put that into context, if I'm counting like romaine lettuce, mm-hmm. I can do 1,500 heads of romaine lettuce a week. Out of one system. That's one system. The mushrooms, we do mushrooms also. And the mushrooms, we do 350 pounds of mushrooms a week. Okay. So, and that's one system. All right. So just to give you an idea of what we can do. And we can grow a variety of stuff. Right. So when we came up with the idea, we figured out how we can get there, what we can do to make it cost effective and bring the food cost down. Mm-hmm. And I like to say it's not only food for humans that we looked into, also for livestock. Mm-hmm. Not that I want to raise livestock, mm-hmm. but the farmers are paying $65 to $55 a bale of hay. If I can provide that food cheaper for the farmers, then it'll give more initiatives for livestock farmers to farm.
Sure.
Because right now the cost of rearing farm animals are very expensive, mm-hmm. right? And it's not only expensive for the farmer, it's also expensive for the government because they subsidize it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately the consumer who has to pay for it.
Exactly. So when we looked into this, we looked in a wide scale issue and see how we can get here slowly but surely. So we came up with a whole concept of doing this, and we put forward a plan to the government, which was quite simple. We looked around, said, okay, we want to be sustainable. We want solar to bring down the cost because we need electricity. So we looked at solar, and we said, where could we put this solar farm? So we said, what we'll do is we will float the solar in an existing quarry lake, thereby not clearing any property. Have 1 acre of property, and on that 1 acre of property, we can grow 150 acres worth of food, believe it or not, mm-hmm. right? Now, because farming in the ground here with local farmers, they can't produce that much. They're with the elements. If you have a hurricane, you're with the elements, so then you're not food secure, mm-hmm. right? So the whole system consisted of solar. So 3 megawatts of solar, 1 megawatt will be used to run the farms with backup generator just in case you need it. So you have a hurricane or something, we have backup generators or repairs need to be done. You have a backup generator so you never be out of power. A battery, okay? Mm-hmm. And then we'll sell back 2 megawatts of solar to CUC at 11 cents per kilowatt, which then would pay for the solar system, thereby not putting up the food costs.
Right.
Right? So you can keep the food costs sustainable. We can then provide island with not only food that we can eat as humans, but also for livestock, thereby supporting the whole farm society within our islands.
Right. Now,
if you don't mind, Mr. Harris, I was just gonna say, I know you get on that CUC part, but just walk through, because you talked about growing the food in the containers. Mm-hmm. But there's a shelving and there's the lights and stuff that I think you need to talk about a little bit to help us to make perfect sense.
Well, no, that's exactly where I wanted to go. Before we get to, the CUC, the solar, and the cost effectiveness of this conversation, I want to go back to where you said you can grow 1,500 heads of lettuce in a week. Now, forgive my ignorance, and Ellio, by all means, you can educate me as well, but there is something called the grow cycle. And, plants in general have anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months to achieve that cycle. How do you go from seed to lettuce that you can sell in the supermarket in a week?
Okay, so let me clarify that for you. So the plant takes, we have, if you count in lettuces, so let's talk about lettuce. So if you count lettuces, we have 3-week, a 4-week, and a 5-week lettuce. Depends how big you want the lettuce to grow. Okay, so once we start growing, that's your cycle. But on one system, you can yield 1,500 heads per week out of each system.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
And the beauty of this is it's all organic. All the seeds are completely organic, right? Y'all can come out and have a visit. It's completely organic. The only loss that we have within the farms is simple. If a seed does not sprout.
Right.
Okay. We've been through a couple storms. Yes, we've been through a couple of storms here already. It's no hurt to us. I have a backup generator in the system now. Only thing we're hooked up to CUC. People are of the notion that plants need sunlight to grow. Okay. Plants only need red light and blue light. Okay. Red light to make the plant grow. Blue light to give the plant the color. Right? So we are running at a 5-to-1 ratio. Okay? And through our testing, and mind you now, we tested this process for almost a year during COVID, right? And right after, to test the product, giving it to family members, seeing how it tastes, seeing what the product is like. And I can tell you emphatically that if you eat any of my products, you're not going to want to buy anything else. Okay? You can taste the difference. It's like you taking a mango off your mango tree and then going to the supermarket and buying one, right? That's shipped in. Which one tastes better?
Right.
The one you possibly get from your tree. So that's the concept behind it. And with the technology that we have these days, I mean, most countries, sophisticated countries, are moving towards doing it because there is a need and it's a necessity.
When you have the lighting, is it a case then that you providing that 24 hours a day, the lighting?
No.
And okay.
No. So the plant obviously goes into darkness. So for instance, our system, our lights come on, and we chose this. The lights come on like from 2 o'clock, right, until onward within the night, and then go back off 2 o'clock in the day, right, for about 8-9 hours, depends on what we want.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the time, the plants are in darkness, and it waters simultaneously. You don't have to do, like, for instance, if I count in one of the systems, one person can deal with one system in less than 8 hours a day, right? Everything is based on your phone, on your computer. You can tell what the plants are doing. You can tell what it needs. You can tell if it needs oxygen. You can tell whatever it needs and what's happening with the plants, right?
And how much? You said that you could grow a certain amount of acreage, if you like, in one container. How much was that again?
So in one container, if we count in lettuces, you can do whatever you can grow on 1 acre land. I can do in one system.
Okay. And how does that work out insofar as employment is concerned? I mean, in terms of somebody manning that one particular container, is it one person can manage 4?
One person can manage 4, but as you scale up, that you get into supply and packaging, and then obviously you grow.
Yeah.
But the whole plan behind this was simple, and this is what we put forward, is we also put forward a plan to the then government of 2 things. Well, more than 2 things, but I'll just go through it. That we can provide food, and this is how we can do it. We walked them through the whole process. They brought people on this island from overseas to come and look at our systems, right? Okay? And everybody liked it and said, okay, why aren't you doing this? Now, what we also did is, in the process of building the system and getting it implemented, what we suggested was we'll go into the colleges, go into the schools, teach about it. Thereby, by the time we have the system and the facility up and going, we'd have Caymanians ready to take those posts.
Right.
Right? So we'd offered it to the colleges, we'd offered it to different people that we can do this, and we can do it, and we can do it here. But the problem is that I find in most instances is governments rather fly all over the place instead of looking home. And most of the time we have the solutions here, right? But they only like to use the Caymanians for picture taking, versus actually looking at it and being wholeheartedly wanting to solve this issue. And we can do it here, and we can do most of it. There's no reason that we can't supply as much food as we can supply here. And I'm including livestock, okay? And then you support the rest of farmers with their ground foods that has to be grown in the ground. Right? So you shift farmers that already want to grow, you support them in growing ground foods.
Okay. Well, that was going to be my question. I mean, certainly if you can grow lettuce or a product in a week to 4 weeks and grow them in large quantities, what would take the local farmer a number of acres to achieve, automatically my mind says that you're in competition with the local farmers, but you're saying you're not.
No, well, first of all, they can't provide what I can provide. They can't provide the type of lettuces I can provide.
And what are the types? What can you
grow? For instance, if I say romaine, there's no way for a farmer here to be, if we were talking about food sustainability, it's no way for farmers here to be food sustainable with growing romaine lettuce.
Why?
Because and it's not cost effective. The elements outside, the bugs, the storms, you name it.
It's too hot for...
Too hot.
Okay.
So you name the elements out there, that is what they have to put up with.
Okay.
Okay. So that's why the technology has grown throughout the years to say this is where we need to be. I mean, if you look at places like Singapore and other places, they're going this route because they realize that the only way to be real food sustainable, you have to use the technology that has been given to us, right?
Right.
Okay. So it's a proven concept and it's being used all over the place. We need to and we seem to be the last all the time, and we can be the first. So, for instance, with the floating solar and with this system, it literally would have been the first within the world of using floating solar plus the system.
Right.
Okay.
So tell us about what are the limitations insofar as what you can grow. I can definitely see that things like fodder for the for the animals. I can see the lettuce, but I imagine there's some limitations, right, in terms of like the farmers would still be in the okra business, maybe, for example.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So what we could do is we can grow from lettuces, sweet peppers, carrots, radishes, herbs, because all of our water that comes out, and I'll say this because I didn't mention it. So when we talk about water in our plants, right, we make our own water. Okay, so we capture the humidity out the atmosphere, right, and that's what we use to water our plants.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very environmentally friendly.
Yeah. So we're doing about 280 gallons, and to water one container of plants is 5 gallons of water per day.
Okay. So
right.
It's a lot of water used.
Right. Well, we're generating a lot of water because we're actually dumping water now.
Okay.
Okay. Because we only out of 280 gallons, we only using 5 gallons of water per day. Right. So it's overflowing. We have to dump it out. But in the full facility, what would naturally happen is that water that is cold.
Well, I'll interject to say that's a good one as well. I mean, the excess water, because that is something that the animals can use too. So when you're talking about all your fodder and stuff, I mean, there's always a need for water with the animals.
Well, we wouldn't use it for animals to drink.
Oh, it's not?
No. What we would use it for is we'd use it for the fodder. We'd use it for the spin-off of growing tomatoes, sweet peppers, green peppers, stuff like that.
Right.
Okay.
Now, because the system itself is a closed or otherwise indoor system, you climate control the environment. So in addition to growing things like romaine lettuce, as you pointed out, we can't grow here because of the tropics, because of the heat, because of the bugs.
Right.
Theoretically, you could produce things that are not traditionally grown in the tropics, like strawberries, blueberries.
Yeah,
yes.
We can. So what will make that cost effective is the solar.
Right.
Right, because we have to wait for the berry to fruit and do the berries. So we can do it. So the facility, just to give you all an idea and why it came an idea, it was the system would be housed within a huge warehouse, which each system would be inside of that, separate, like doing separate stuff. And the reason we chose that is because if we need to scale back on something or scale up on something, we can. Say, for instance, we have an issue with one system with any kind of disease or contamination. Because it's in that system, it wouldn't spread to all the rest, so thereby staying food secure.
Right.
Because you can imagine a huge greenhouse, you have the disease going through it and everything is wiped out. So then you're not food secure.
The pink mealybug epidemic in Cayman as an example.
Right. So hence the reason why we chose this system. And within that warehouse would have the whole facility. You'll be able to control everything. You'll be able to have a parking room. You'll be able to have everything and all sterile. Fully sterile environment to do everything that you needed to do properly.
All right. Now, again, to recap the first stage of innovation. So you're saying that what it would take potentially 150 acres of raw land, you can produce the same quantity of vegetable, sweet potato, pepper on the equivalent of 1 acre of land using solar power and, of course, a climate-controlled system to do this. That's impressive in the first instance. You've mentioned the second innovation, which we are about to touch on now. What would power this system would be a 3 megawatt floating solar array. Why floating?
Well, the reason we went with floating is simple fact of the matter is if you're trying to be sustainable, why go and clear land to put solar?
Okay.
Why not use something that is just there?
So explain what you mean when you say floating.
Well, if we use an existing quarry lake, the lake is just there. We dug a hole in the ground. The lake is there doing what?
Right.
Nothing at this point. We took the material out. The water is there. But being that the water is already there, we don't have to clear the property. Then we float the solar within that lake.
Gotcha.
I see.
Right. Thereby using that lake without clearing any more land, without clearing any more bushes. If you can be sustainable, let's be sustainable.
And again, just to break it down to its smaller moving parts for the listening audience who may, again, be ignorant to some of these facts. I mean, I had to learn it as well, so I count myself in that bracket. But your traditional quarry, after a while, you start digging a hole, you extract all of the minerals you possibly can from that hole, and then you move on to make another hole. But what you've done in the process of extracting minerals is obviously you've created a lake or body of water. So now what you're suggesting is you can reuse that body of water, which until you showed up would have just been a hole in the ground with water in it that perhaps would fill up during rainy season and perhaps, lend itself to reducing flooding. But now you're using those holes instead of clearing new land in order to power this farm of the future.
Correct. Now, because most of the quarry holes are just there, we dig holes and we leave it there, and we have no other alternative really here in getting materials out. So we have to blast, drill, and most of the place is wet because we have a low water table. So the quarry holes are normally there. I don't necessarily think, or I know that they don't really take flooding water away because the water table is the water table. Even if you drill a deep well or you have a quarry hole, the water table is the water table, right? So it won't do anything to take water away, right? But it's just there sitting, and we can use these holes to do stuff as I am saying, instead of it sitting there, right? So that was a proposal that we put forward, and we've been fighting the proposal now for a better part of probably about 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
To get any headway on what is, Caymanian innovation?
Yes.
Something that would not compete with local farmers, but complement local farmers?
No. Yeah. So we went to Cabinet at the time, and we pitched this to Cabinet, not once, but twice.
Wow.
Okay, twice. We sat at the Cabinet. We had some of them come out. We showed them all the farms. We showed them what we can do. We went through the whole process and said it's not about generating electricity. It's about producing food and being food sustainable.
Yeah.
Because it's going to come a time, right, that, and COVID showed us, that if we're locked off from the rest of the world, what do you do? At the end of the day, everywhere else around the world will look out for themselves before they look out for anywhere else.
Absolutely.
Right? So we need to secure ourselves in some manner. And the fact is, out of all the Caribbean islands, I would say that Cayman been the best at financial and everything else. And you can look around, the crime is generally low. But it's not going to stay that way if we continue to do the things that we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? And we simply need to look and be innovative and trust in our people to have the solutions and put the value in our people. And that's one of the things that we haven't done.
I want to ask you on you talk about floating the solar panels and stuff on the water/lake. In this particular case, is it a situation where your farm is close to one of those lakes, or?
Well, the thing is that I can put the facility next to any lake.
Right.
So I had agreements, I won't name the places.
Sure.
Put in place to do this stuff at. I have one existing agreement.
So that is your preference?
Yes.
Yes.
The reason, because it makes no sense. Okay. I'm of the notion, simple. If we're going to clear property to put solar, okay, no matter if it's 1 acre, 2 acres, 3 acres, 8 acres, you're using land that could be for housing, thereby taking that off of the market,
right?
Thereby prices going up anyway. So when you hear CUC talking about clearing 100 acres of land, I have a problem with that, okay? Because we're talking about clearing land and talking about the environment and talking about putting solar in and clearing 500, 200 or whatever acres of land to put solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's 200 acres of land that's not on the market now, right?
That's right.
Okay. So why don't we be innovative? Okay. Why don't we use, and I'm not saying that we have enough open land here, meaning when I say that, parking lots, buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my view, every government parking lot, every government building should have solar on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why they shouldn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They'll save the employees' cars, they can save on the electrical bill at the end of the day, right? And sell back. And mind you, the law says that CUC shall buy the power back. It don't say may.
Right.
It says shall.
Mm-hmm.
They provide it, they have to buy it.
So let's laymanize this to my colleague's point. You have something that is going to be able to allow you to produce a lot more than you would on traditional lands. So you're conserving there. It is not necessarily in direct competition with farmers, because I completely agree with you. I mean, it's hostile out there.
Yes.
I mean, I got something in East End. It's hostile. So I completely agree with you. And so it's not necessarily in competition. In fact, it's very symbiotic. You talk about even being able to make fodder save costs. Again, for the persons who have to buy hay, guilt is judged.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of all of these things. So you said you presented all as the cabinet. So one step at a time, what exactly is it that was the problem? What are the things that are impeding you, and what were the responses that you got?
If I can ask you to hold that thought, we're going to answer that question when we come back, but we do need to pause and take a short commercial break. Keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk here on Bobo FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
K-Man, could it be you? Tortuga's 10K giveaway is back, and someone's walking away with $10,000 in cash. Every time you spend $25 at Tortuga Fine Wine and Spirits or discount liquors, in-store or online at tortuga.ky, you get a shot at winning big. As well as $10,000 in cash, we've got thousands in giveaways to hand out every week. Think staycations, the latest iPhones, exclusive experiences, and more. Get in to win. Visit tortuga.ky for the full terms and conditions.
With you in mind, we have your style. Find what you need down every aisle. You want saving, selection, and quality. That's why we're your home store. The way to make a home. The way to make a home.
When it comes to weekly meal prep, I trust Kirk Market to provide the best value for quality proteins. The butchers at Kirk Market are super helpful. They always slice my steaks perfectly. Kirk Market has everything I need for healthy and flavorful protein-packed meals. From lean cuts of CAB choice beef, tender CAB prime beef, the juiciest pork, and all-natural hormone-free poultry, to their seafood section with everything from fresh local snapper to omega-3 rich salmon. I choose Kirk Market for the highest quality proteins to support my healthy lifestyle. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and discover a world of choice.
K-Man, Units is here, the island's newest move-in and storage solution. Our robot delivery system allows you to put your unit almost anywhere while providing level loading, uploading, and minimizing shifting. What's even better, no time constraints. Pack at your own pace for moving or store as long as you need. Short-term or long-term, at the home or on the job site. Units, fast, safe, and secure. Check us out at units.ky and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Visit Healthcare Pharmacy's second location in Governor Square, servicing West Bay and the 7 Mile Beach Corridor with the care and professionalism you have come to expect from Healthcare Pharmacy. Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor Square also stocks a huge selection of Hallmark and shoebox greeting cards, vitamins, sunblock, last minute, and everyday needs. To refill and transfer your prescriptions, simply WhatsApp 329-7313 or visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or drop by Monday to Saturday from 9 till 6.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
We just don't understand how you could afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu starting at just $3 gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shetton Road, and in the Strand. The KFC What a Deal value meals. The deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices. KFC, so good.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM on your radio dial and simulcast live over Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Our guest in studios, Mr. Kerry Lawrence, Principal Director of a local company called Primitive Greens, which we are learning has the ability to produce not only the produce that Cayman needs in order to survive, but also hay and grass and other fodder that might also assist other industries like cattle and other things, which also we are kind of important for food consumption. The proposal of Primitive Greens is to generate through a solar farm the equivalent of a 150-acre farm using only 1 acre of raw land, and that's just the beginning. As we were saying during the last break, and certainly my colleague asked, I think, the fundamental question, how is it possible that you have taken this innovative solar farming idea that matches solar farming with a floating solar grid, which of course eliminates the need for destruction of, raw land in order to put these solar panels, but also one that provides food security for a country that imports, I think, 99% of all the produce that we consume, in our community. We can do this all on hand ourselves here and can be locally owned and operated. Why isn't this, why hasn't this been embraced by the government? What took more than one meeting that lasted less than 15 minutes? We don't understand it. Tell us.
Well, the simple fact of the matter is I didn't think that any of them really had the ambition to see this happen. I mean, we say this all the time, but this is the way I feel.
Okay.
I feel like if maybe I'd flown in here with this idea, they would have taken it up a lot sooner.
Right.
Well, we have politicians today talking about going to places like Dominican Republic, Cuba, Jamaica, to get produce that we otherwise already get from these locations with the suppliers we have. But to replace them, we have a local farmer, Caymanian, presenting this innovative idea, farms of the future. What is so difficult?
The funny part is that all of them came to my farm. I think the only ones that didn't come and walk through the farm was possibly Julie.
Okay.
Miss Julie from Cayman Brock. I don't think she got an opportunity to come. She was traveling or something, but all the rest of the politicians came to the farm and had a look at it.
Would this idea be able to feed the Sister Islands as well as Grand Cayman?
Of course. The idea was to make Cayman in a whole food sustainable.
Okay.
Right? And as much as we can. Okay? I mean, obviously we can't provide rice and stuff like that, but as much as we can, the necessity that if we need that kind of food, we have it here.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, it's perfectly scalable.
And if we can limit most of our imports and be that kind of sustainable, then we should do it, right? And you would think that as a Caymanian company come up to do this and put all initiative forward, and mind you, we did not ask the government, right, for any money, no financing. We had the financing available to us. We didn't ask them for any property. All we simply asked them for is support. Support by the way of cutting the red tape for us as they normally do for any other developer that's come to this island that they give concessions to, right? You would not, and we wasn't asking for any concessions, right? What we were asking for was simple. Cut the red tape. Let's look at this holistically and see how we can get this done.
And we definitely give away a lot of concessions.
Yes.
So what were some of the specific things that you were asking for?
Well, what we asked for was simple. It took, after reading all the laws, right? So I'll start with this. After the pitch to government on numerous occasions trying to figure out why we can't get this done, right? I was told at one point by then the premier that he had a conflict of interest, so he couldn't push off, right? Which was Wayne at the time.
Sorry,
right?
The premier of the islands told you it was a conflict of
interest for him.
Him?
Yeah.
And that's why the government wasn't prepared to support you?
I wouldn't say the entire government because there's more members there, but that's why I was told by him, right? So that made me feel a little bit perturbed because as the leader of the country, how are you going to have a conflict? So that took me back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to the drawing board and said, listen, well, there's other members there that could possibly push this. I started leaning on some of the other members to push this forward.
Minister of Agriculture?
Everybody came, seen it, liked it. They brought other ministers of agriculture from other islands to see my facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I pitched the whole project to those facilities. That's one of the reasons why I actually went to Turks and Caicos. So we're in Turks and Caicos trying to do the same thing, right? We had the Minister of Agriculture from the Turks and Caicos come here, visited my facility. You can look back in the newspaper and see her there. She literally flew to the island just to come to my facility to look at it, right? To go through. So we actually have an application in Turks and Caicos.
You'll probably get that quicker than here.
I would think so. I hope.
The stone that the builder refused. You heard that statement before? So you can't find headway in your country.
Yeah.
But another Caribbean island, seeing the benefits and opportunity, want to scoop up this idea.
Well, one of the things that was asked by some of the ministers that came to the farm from foreign countries was, why isn't the government doing this right away?
Yeah,
and
why?
one of my responses was, they're sitting right in front of you, ask them. Right? Literally.
Wow.
So these are...
And you also got the sign-off, not to cut you, but we talk about our elected politicians, and in this instance, all you can do is shake your head as to why this wasn't embraced. But you also got the nod of approval from a former governor in the Cayman Islands. True.
Yes, we did. Right? But again, I leaned on that instance, but he really couldn't do anything about it. He brought it up in cabinet as he said he would.
Yeah, make this stuff up, man.
Right? So these are some of the things that Cayman and companies deal with, right? And then I look and I listen to the election cycle of these same individuals sit there and saying that they're for Cayman, they're going to change Cayman, they're going to do this. How?
Yeah.
Where? Show me.
Yeah, give me a proof.
Right? Give me proof. Right? Because I am stuck with why the initiative was stumped. And we allow, like, for instance, okay, so let's start with this. In the National Energy Policy, the first one, it stated that, mind you know, it stated that the definition of utility scale solar at the time, right, was when 100% of the energy generated was sold to the grid. Okay? When 100% of the energy generated is sold to the grid, that was the definition in the policy as utility scale.
You're talking about the National Energy Policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, that was the first one. So that's what the definition was. So the first instance when it went in, they said they had an issue, OFREG had an issue with what the National Energy Policy said. OFREG role is simply to look at that policy, and they're simply supposed to set the rates. But that's not actually so. CUC, right, has been setting rates where OFREG is supposed to be setting. And the mere fact of the matter is how the law is written, okay? So the only way for government, which they would not do, and which we told them that they could exercise, and we asked them to exercise it, was they could have given cabinet could have given a directive to OFREG to say, listen, look at this project seriously and let's do it. Mm-hmm. The other option we also gave government, which is within the law, which would have taken a little bit longer, but we could have went through the process, as in where we were planning to put the solar, we need one to run the facility, 1 megawatt, and we wanted 2 megawatts to sell to pay for the installation of the solar, so we wouldn't have to tag that onto the food.
Mm-hmm.
That was the basis.
So you can cost control the price, or price control the price, so keep it affordable.
Yes, correct.
Right.
So the lake that we was looking at can hold more than 3 megawatts of solar. Mm-hmm. So one of the other options that we said to government was simple. Why don't you tag team up with us and fill the lake as much as it can hold, which would be 8 megawatts of solar. So government will have the 5, and we'd have our 3, and we put it to off-reg government, private partnership, move it forward. That's one option.
Public-private partnership.
Right. The other option was simply to give a directive to off-reg and say, let's do this.
Right.
Right. So one of the issues, and if you don't believe me, ask yourself why the dump, when it came to them selling power back, if they say they wanted to do waste the energy, why did not happen?
Why didn't it happen?
Because price point again. CUC is dictating what price they're willing to pay for the energy. Why do you think the value for solar report took so long to come out? Right?
Wow.
So we allow the fox to guard the hen house constantly, right? And it's up to the government because they can give directive, and cabinet is a ability to give the directive and say this is what we want to do and this is what we're going to do. If they can't do it on their own project, which was the waste of energy, right? And they definitely didn't do it for me, right? Then what use?
So you said...
So off-reg gets a horrible name with people not knowing exactly, but after going into it, and the main sticking point on this, after me and one of my partners at James Whitaker, because he's well known in the solar industry and solar, so he came on board. So when we started this, just to give you a bit of history, is I started this process, and I've always known that we have to go solar. So after starting the whole process and getting proof of concept, my next call was simply James. He was already doing solar here. Why reinvent the wheel? He's another Caymanian.
I was going to say.
He's doing solar here. Why reinvent the wheel? So obviously I picked up the phone and called and said, James, look at what I have here. I said, come up at my place and let me show you something, because this is what I want to do. When he came to my place, he was expecting to see some small shed with a bunch of lights in it, right? That's not what he saw, right?
Right.
Okay. Then he goes, I was looking at the same thing.
Okay.
Right. And you were miles ahead of me. Right. So how could we get this together? And I said, well, you're Caymanian and solar. I'm Cayman trying to do this. Let's just see if we can do it together.
Sure.
So hence the reason why another 2 Caymanians trying to do this.
Right.
So in going through this whole process, at that time, we realized at the time that CUC license was coming due in 2028. Also brought up to cabinet. And I brought up to cabinet and other individuals more than once. Told them the license was coming due. Told them all they had to do was write a letter to CUC, telling them that you intend on negotiating. Not one soul did it, right?
Wow.
So the license have rolled over now for another 20 years without giving Caymanians a chance, to even negotiate. Okay? Now, just fathom that for a little bit now. Okay?
Let that marinate for
okay?
a while.
So these are the kind of things that happen, right? And then it bothers me because I am 50 years old, and I tell all my friends this, right? 50 years old. I got more years behind me than I have ahead of me. So I look at my children, I look at my grandchildren. What are they going to face if this is the kind of leadership and stuff that we have here on this island?
Yes.
And you wonder why Caymanians pack up and leave, my friend.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
So we have, again, because I let that marinate a little while, and it's really driving me nuts. So we have, in the first instance, when you made this proposal, I think either a first or a second time, a then sitting premier tell you, well, you're not going to get my support because it's a conflict of interest to my own private interest as a sitting premier, which baffles the mind. Then you said that OFREG, the utility regulator, which is part of their license agreement, is to encourage competition in a number of sectors, but certainly renewable energy. And I will, I'll quote directly from the National Energy Policy to make this point if I have to. But we see in that instance, OFREG and their functions are being hamstrung by the monopoly utility provider in the Cayman Islands, who are saying, well, it is because of them that control price that makes the introduction of competition not cost-effective, and certainly not cost-effective in your instance. Well, and then to add insult to injury, we have talked about it on this program. I think it was you that called and suggested that, we have an opportunity, once every 20 years cycle to make an amendment or adjustments to the contract in which CUC has with the people of the Cayman Islands, perhaps to, bargain for lower utility rates, but no one utilized that opportunity, even after you reminded them, as part of these presentations to Cabinet, that they had this window of opportunity. So neither did they embrace your innovative Caymanian idea and opted, of course, for the usual, politicized comments, but you also inform them that they have an opportunity to impact utility bills, which every Caymanian feels, and they chose not even to write a single memo.
Yes. So one of the other things I'll tell you now to stomp you, right? So at the time,
and they didn't re-elect me and you, Ellio. Can you believe this? I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
At the time, I was
makes
forced.
sense.
I was forced by then. I think it was Peter Goff, which was chairman of at the time, to go and speak to CUC. Right now, I must go speak to CUC and show them my plan to put solar and show them what I plan to do for them to set a price. So my question was, and I was a little bit perturbed about it, 'cause quite simple. Why am I going to see CUC? I only supposed to go talk to CUC about connection. Why am I going to see CUC about a price? Is CUC going to allow me to put it? I was told by Richard Hugh himself that simple fact of the matter is, if I give it to you, then I'll have to give it to everybody else. Well, give it to people.
Yes.
He literally told me that in a meeting, right? And I wasn't the only one in the chair.
Right.
So I have witnesses that that's what he said, right?
Okay.
So I said, well, give it. He said, well, we can do big solar scale for 10 cents a kilowatt. Well, it's simple economics of scale. If you can only put 7 solar panels in your house, how are you going to do it for 10 cents?
Mm-hmm.
That's a stupid analogy, right? When they say those kind of things, because it's quite simple. If Ellio Solomon could put solar on his roof to save him $700, right? Why not allow him to do it and become the distributor of said power?
Right.
They're not losing any money by doing it. Okay? So if we went down the road of allowing people to put solar and using all the solar that we can, right, from what we have, the amount of buildings, the amount of parking lots, the amount of this stuff, and then look at, okay, this is how much solar we may need on land, right? But CUC just want to turn in from a diesel generation monopoly, right? But they don't have the monopoly. I won't say that. They don't have the monopoly on generation, right? They have the monopoly on distribution, okay? But they like to hide behind that, but they're the ones that dictating what they're going to pay for the rates.
Right.
So thereby they're stumping you anyway, right? So now we're stuck with CUC wanting to put large-scale solar. CUC want to put it out to tender, and Ofreg putting it out to tender, right? Who's going to win the tender? Ofreg have land that they've bought. CUC has lands that they've bought up for years ago. Any new bidder can come here and buy up lands to do it any cheaper than CUC to do it?
Probably not.
They not do it. And then you have them writing the RFA, helping to write the RFA. Are you kidding me?
Right.
So we need to stop this kind of stuff here on this island and give Caymanians, give people a fair chance. The point is, if you're paying 36 cents for your all in for your electricity, right? Isn't 17 cents cheaper than 36? Isn't 11 cents cheaper than 36? Even 20 cents cheaper than 36? So if you can produce that electricity for that, isn't it cheaper?
Yes.
Right? And diesel will never go down that cheap right now.
I feel like I need to, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but I feel to be balanced, I need to offer some defense for CUC. If we take your analogy of rooftop solar for a home, and for that we have to introduce the core program, what CUC, buys the rooftop excess from a homeowner. Right now, you can't put solar on your roof to cover all of your energy costs. You can maybe run a hot water heater.
Why?
No, I'm just saying under the current rules, a homeowner who wants to make the investment in solar to come off the grid to use sunlight to power their home and therefore save themselves $700. From a CUC perspective, they're a business. They got shareholders' interest to protect. So they don't necessarily want to lose customers because that messes with their bottom line. However, on the other side, if you reduce the load that CUC carries to provide electricity generation and you lose one customer to renewable energy, you've only provided CUC with more firm power, guaranteed power, for the remaining clients and customers. So I don't know whether or not that is a fair trade-off, but from a CUC perspective, if you come off grid, you come off their client records. And no business wants to reduce their client growth, their market share. They want to expand it, no?
Well, nothing stops. Let me clarify this here quickly. So you can go off grid if you want without going to off reg, right? Completely off grid.
You can?
Yeah, you can put solar on your roof and go off grid.
Off reg doesn't have to approve it?
You can't sell the excess power back to CUC.
Okay, but you can keep it all for yourself, so to speak.
Yourself if you want to.
Okay.
Right? But you can't sell the excess power back to CUC. So the core program is designed, and it's not designed to save all your electrical bill.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed specifically just for an amount. The reason simply designed for that is quite simple. One, most people selling directly to the grid, and because of economy of scale of how much solar you can put on your roof, it makes no sense to put a battery in. So you're selling directly to the grid, which means when the electricity go out, they also have no electricity.
Right.
Make that make sense?
I can't.
Okay. So instead of allowing people to put as much solar as they can and put a battery in, because now they can produce enough power, fill the battery, and sell back to the grid, right? And one of the things, while I have it in my head, that we also offered, and we said to offer, and we said to Cabinet also, is if you wanted to, what we can do is we can also put a battery in at our facility, which simply means if you think you can't take the power in the day, then take it at night. Because we have a battery, take it when you need it. Take it at night. So you can't use the argument now if we're going to disrupt the grid, right?
Explain a little bit more. When we're talking about CUC having that monopoly over the transmission and distribution, but not necessarily over the generation, what is it insofar as CUC's payment? Because now you're going to generate, they have to pay you. You talked about seeming a conflict of interest and they shouldn't be setting the price. Maybe it should be off-reg. Speak to that a little bit more.
Well, how they have the solar put up now is a pass-through cost.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's 17 cents, it's a pass-through cost, same as fuel. And they're distributing it. So CUC isn't losing any money. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The point, the fact of the matter is, in Hawaii is a proven concept already that they're using it, and they just turned into a distributor. And they charge for distributing the current.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay? So we allow CUC to get away with a bunch of stuff here that government and governments have not looked at in order to rein it in and make it better for the people, right? A friend of mine and I was talking the other day, and in talking, you know, we came to talk, and I'm going to ask you a question. I think I mentioned it to you already, right? Most of the light poles on island and government roads is on government land. Am I correct in saying that?
Right. Either government land, which is, again, public property, or somebody's private property.
Okay. So on the main roads, is mostly all on government land.
Sure.
On the side of the road. But we give CUC permission to put the light poles on government property.
No charge.
No charge. But we got to pay for street lights.
Correct. I want to shake your hand. I've been saying the same thing.
We got to pay for street lights.
Yeah.
And then we turn around
and electricity to power those street lights.
Yeah. And then we turn around and allow them to rent out space on that said light pole that on government property.
And make them in.
Companies and make them in. You're joking?
And they don't stop there. According to CUC contract, they make 15% on all infrastructure.
Exactly.
So they build the light poles, you pay for the light poles and electricity, and you pay them back 15% for the light pole to be there.
And at least on the one scenario that we know about Hurricane Ivan, when they were damaged, we had to pay to get it, put them back too.
Exactly. So we need people in government that are willing to take the hard stands and actually put Cayman in first. And nobody wants to put CUC out of business. They provide a good service. But you need to be fair, right? Yes. You can't have all of the cake. You're far enough now.
Correct.
Okay? Give it to somebody else. Let them have some too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say a free or even better prices on the street now would probably be a good place to start.
You know, that would kind of ease people up. And it perturbs me, first of all, to know that the government missed the boat on that, because they could have drawn CUC in and said, this is where we want to go.
Yes.
Right? They missed the boat completely. Now,
and they had timing-wise, it would have worked out perfect because the again, the contract was getting ready to renew.
Right. So
that was the time to act.
Right. So it stated that you had to give them 5 years notice because their contract was up in 2028, and you had to give them 5 years notice. So that time has passed. 2 years ago, I think. Whatever it is.
Yeah, we had another 20 years.
Right. So it passed. But
like stars and the moons aligning.
We have a solution to that issue also, which I will mention that on this show.
Okay.
But there is something that we can do to combat that. Okay. We just need a government in place in order for them to want to do it.
The will to do it.
The will to do it and the want to see Caymanians do better. So they come up here all the time to talk about dropping the cost of living and doing all this stuff. And it bugs me because initiatives like this, right?
Would do that.
Not only that, isn't it funny that we talk about taking duties off of essential items and other stuff that we have to put back onto something else when you give enormous amount of concessions? Are you joking?
Yeah.
Can't we use that money to go to it and then we talk about these things and talk about how you're going to fix the place? Well, you have plenty of years to do it.
Well, we talk about a lot of things, and I want to quote directly from the 2017 National Energy Policy. It says that the 2017 National Energy Policy established the high-level targets of 70% of total electricity generation from renewable sources by 2037, then 100% from renewable energy penetration by 2045. In the current picture, more than 97% of all electricity demand in the Cayman Islands is met by diesel generators and only 3% from utility scale and distributed solar. So on the one hand, we have a national energy policy that aspires for many great things, but on reality on the ground, we seem to have elected leadership, former and arguably current, who are quite happy with the status quo, despite whatever they may tell you. And when presented with opportunities, not from a foreigner, but from a Caymanian, instead of finding reasons to make this work for everybody's best interest, we seem to find reasons and excuses why it can't work. I tell you, we can't make this up. Keep it locked. We're going to pause, take a short commercial break, but more to come on Straight Talk.
Bobo.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Neil Nunes with the BBC News. President Trump has announced sweeping new tariffs on almost all goods entering the United States, with major implications for global trade. In a speech in the Rose Garden of the White House, he said the date would be remembered as Liberation Day, when prosperity returned to America. The measures include a minimum tax of 10% on all imports, with higher rates for those from trading partners like the European Union. The bloc, he said, was ripping off the United States.
European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%.
Our Europe editor Katya Adler says the European Commission is considering its response to Trump's move.
They are carefully considering their next move. They've chosen not to make a statement tonight. They do not want to up the ante. They think a global trade war is in nobody's interest, but they think they need to stand firm. Unlike the UK, for example, which is taking a more softly, carefully approach, the EU thinks there's no point. So the Commission has prepared a range of possible retaliatory measures on US goods and US services as well, like US banks, big tech, Meta, Apple, for example.
During his speech, Mr. Trump held up a long list of countries that will be hit with higher tariffs. Imports from China will face a 34% tax. Some of the highest rates are imposed on smaller Asian countries such as Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos that have hefty U.S. trade surpluses due to their production of electronics and garments. Governments around the world have been absorbing the contents of Mr. Trump's speech and calculating the likely impact on their economies. Australia said the tariffs were total unwarranted and would change the two countries' relationship. Britain said it still wanted a trade deal with Washington to mitigate the impact of Mr. Trump's measures. In other news, Myanmar's military government has announced a 3-week ceasefire. In the wake of Friday's devastating earthquake, the army had faced international criticism for continuing to fight despite the disaster. The BBC's Agita Lamaya travelled undercover to reach Mandalay, the biggest city near the epicenter.
What you're hearing there is the sound of an electrical drill through which they're drilling through the concrete slabs.
We're seeing lots of places where there is just no rescue work going on.
Nan Shin Hein has been waiting on this street for 5 days, hoping someone will come and search for her son, Sai Han Pan.
I'm just holding on, hoping to see my son's face. Whether he's dead or alive, I just want to see his body.
BBC News. The Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, is visiting Greenland's capital Nuuk to support the island during what she called a difficult time. President Trump has repeatedly said he would like to take control of the semi-autonomous Danish territory. On arrival, Ms. Frederiksen said the U.S. would not take over Greenland, which she said belonged to Greenlanders. Activists in Sudan say at least 85 people have been killed during a series of raids by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces or RSF. The Sudanese Resistance Committee says for 7 days the RSF have targeted villages south of the capital Khartoum. Videos show groups of people, including many women and children, walking over a bridge on the River Nile in search of safety. The former president of Costa Rica, Oscar Arias, says he has had his U.S. visa revoked weeks after he said Donald Trump was behaving like a Roman emperor. Mr. Arias, who is 84, won the Nobel Peace Prize for helping negotiate peace deals in Central America in the 1980s. Leonardo Rasha has more details.
Mr. Arias has been a staunch critic of some of the Trump administration's policies, including its stance against migration and its decision to impose trade tariffs on imports. In February, he accused the current Costa Rican government of taking orders directly from Washington. He referred specifically to a decision by President Rodrigo Chavez to exclude Chinese companies from contracts to develop Costa Rica's 5G mobile phone network.
The Slovak cabinet has approved a plan to kill about a quarter of the country's brown bears after a spate of attacks on humans. Announcing the plan to cull 350 bears, the Prime Minister Robert Fico said people couldn't live in a country where they were afraid to go into the woods.
The views and opinions expressed on Street Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Hear Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Straight Talk with your host, Austin Harris, and myself, Ellio Solomon. We are having a wonderful conversation right here in the studio with none other than Mr. Kerry Lawrence. And of course, if you want to join into that conversation or, slightly change the direction, hopefully not so, 745-2626. Again, the number is 745-2626. And it is what? 928-2652?
928-2562. You get better every day. You're getting closer.
I'll soon get it. Give me another 25 attempts. So, Mr. Lawrence, just picking back up on this trigger date, because I did have someone texting me during the break, and again, it just shows you why we just need to keep having these discussions and making sure we're offering up the proper amount of clarification. Walk us through exactly what it is that you're saying. When is it that the CUC contract ended, and that there was a magic period of time that the government would had to have given in order for CUC to, or for you to say, hey, we want to negotiate this or renegotiate?
Well, how it simply worked is, if you read the contract, and it's available to anyone to look on CUC website, it's there. So the contract was up for renewal in 2028, coming up in 2020.
Okay.
But the stipulation within that contract simply says, if government wants to change or renegotiate or whatever the wording is, they would have to give
5 years notice.
5 years notice, which would have been in 2023.
Okay.
Right, sometime in 2023, end of 2022, they would have had to give CUC a written notice by no more than saying, we intend to negotiate your contract in the upcoming 2028 so we can start negotiations. So basically they have 5 years to negotiate timeline.
So the government doesn't even have to stipulate what they intend to negotiate, just their intention to renegotiate.
To negotiate. That would have just, that 2-line letter in 5 minutes, if that, would have simply given any government that coming in now
an opportunity
to negotiate on behalf of the people, whatever that may have been.
Right.
And I keep saying government, right? But I also want to put this on the lap of the opposition. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because they're also elected members.
Yes.
Right? They were also elected members. And not only that they were elected members, they are there for one purpose. And the purpose is to hold whatever government accountable for any decisions or non-decisions made.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Indeed.
So really you're speaking to all and or about all the members of parliament, basically, even though you spoke directly to the government. So tell us a little bit of how that conversation came about.
What I want to clarify when we're going on to that now is that one person that was not there in cabinet at the time, well, Miss Julia wasn't there, but of course she was part of the cabinet, and they should have told her what was happening.
Sure.
So the only person that I think that would not have been informed of it would have simply been the Speaker of the House at the time, which would have been Catherine, I believe.
Yeah, Catherine Ebanks-Wilton.
Okay.
Right? So
and Miss Julia.
Yeah, but she was the Deputy Premier at the time.
Yeah.
So she should have been informed.
She should have been informed, right? So.
But then, if
I mean, you know how government.
If you take that position, then Catherine would be informed as well. Even though she was Speaker, she's still a member of the government, right?
Well, I guess she left out of not making any decisions at the time because she's Speaker of the House.
Oh.
So I'll leave that where that is there. But I'll just like to say the process was simple. We pitched the idea of what we wanted to do in looking over the contract and seeing what we can do prior to presenting what we wanted to do to OFREG.
Right.
We simply went through the contract, saw where we would have probably got stumbled, right? And tried to cover all the bases.
Right.
That's what we done. And while doing that is when we looked at it and said, oh, well, the contract is almost up. So this is something that we can also point out. We're going to be there anyway. Let's point it out.
And so while making a presentation, if I got this right, while making a presentation to Cabinet, amongst other things, that's one of the things that you raised at that point.
Yeah, and not only that, prior to the timeline being up, I also reached back out.
You see, I really have to say, I wasn't there. I'll stress that. I mean, and forgive me if I'm pausing, okay,
dude.
But
I'm with you.
I'm pausing for a reason. This is just totally amazing, and I want people to understand. Let me just do a quick math here, and work with me. This is important. So let's just get my trusty calculator out. Then on an average, somewhere in there is about, I think is a $12,000 figure, roughly, right on. Mr. Harris, you were there last.
Sounds about right.
You know what else I'd like to say?
Sure, while he's doing math.
While I'm doing my math.
The other part of this that really perturbs me, right? After we had change of government, because they changed about 3 times different names.
Yep.
Right? We still had time. Okay?
Sure.
Andre Ebanks sat in my office for 2.5 hours going through this process and letting him know that the contract was also coming due. Personally.
Wow.
He sat in my office. Okay? Went through why Primitive didn't get done and what he was going to do it, and it went dead. And not only that, okay, they didn't do anything about Primitive, but they could have written a 2-line letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I want to say now that I've gotten some number to attach to this, because people really need to understand it. We are paying nothing less than $2,736,000 a month. Or is this a year? Let me just double check. I want to make sure I get the math right. 12,000 times 12 times 19. No. Per month. So you, the taxpayer, is paying $2,736,000 every month for those representatives. And what we have here is someone who's telling us that more than half of them were directly informed, arguably more on more than one occasion. And all of them should have known, make themselves known, and hold the other ones accountable. $2,736,000 a month, over $10 million in that 4-year period. And not one single person thought it were I don't even think it was echoed in Parliament.
No.
Well, I never even heard it echoed in Parliament.
McKeewa Bush brought it up in Parliament.
Oh, he brought it in Parliament?
After the time passed.
Oh, after the time passed.
Yeah. When it was safe.
Yeah, he brought up in Parliament.
Politically expedient.
He brought up in Parliament after the time had passed. He brought up that they had the opportunity and they missed it. But at the end of the day, the time was already passed, right? But he brought it up in Parliament, it was missed. Okay? He realized it was missed, I guess, and he brought it up in Parliament, it was missed. But the point is simple. I mean, it's perturbing to me when Caymanians put things forward. They all Caymanians, right?
Yeah.
So I don't hate none of them. Okay?
No.
All right? I just simply...
They got to shake your head at them, though.
Yeah, I'm just very perturbed about the notion that we go down this road, and it's election time now, so they're going to say all kind of stuff, right? We go down this road all the time of saying what you're going to do, saying how you're going to do it. I saw a video, and I mean to pick on anybody that they did this whole long video, great video about what about us, right? What happened to us, and that was at the rally, what about us, and blah, blah, blah. Well, you were sitting in there.
Yeah. What'd you do? You had an opportunity. What'd you do?
You were sitting in there. That's what I say, right?
So
you elected member.
$2.7 million a year, over $10 million in the 4-year period. You really, I just want to keep driving home. This is what the taxpayers paid, $10 million for 4 years, and here we are missing an opportunity. First of all, we're not asking them to go out and shake a hand. We're asking them to make a trigger. They don't even have to sit there and actually engage in the negotiations. No. All they simply had to do is sit and say, you know what, we might not have enough time, whatever, any excuse you want. Just write a letter saying, as per provision X, Y, and Z, we wish to inform you that we plan to engage in some renegotiation in this contract. And that would at least leave it so that the government to come in
would have an opportunity
to renegotiate this contract with the whole intention, obviously, of being able to work a better deal for the people of this country. Now, if that is in itself is not a waste of $10 million, I don't know what is.
Well, I'll take it a step further. And again, we have a Minister of Agriculture, we talked about it a half hour ago, who in this last term, regardless of which government administration it was, like you pointed out, there were at least 3. But in this term, using taxpayer dollars to explore a junket to other Caribbean islands. I think Dominican Republic was one of them. I think Jamaica was one of them. Barbados and or Cuba may have been some of those. And again, it was going with the express intention of going out and trying to secure better food security deals for the Cayman Islands by going to the source, which we, of course, have already discussed, the same source that Dole and Chiquita that we already have in our stores provide us. We're going to go to these countries direct in order to acquire them so that we can reduce our food costs and give us a greater sense of food security. We did this. We say this. That same Minister of Agriculture, who happens to also be the current Minister of Planning, I saw this just today. I think it's something on social media with the caption, when they said we could never get anything out of our landfill. And it includes an image of one side of the landfill covered in grass, but also sitting on top of that grass, solar panels, suggesting that we would use the land space, that is the landfill, to house a solar farm, which would then be used to reduce our cost of electricity. This coming from an administration who had the opportunity to hear from a local Caymanian, not once but twice, talk about presenting farming of the future, using solar energy to do so, that wouldn't require large swaths of land, but very small amounts, not asking the government for concession or investment, because you're using, obviously, the energy produced by the sun in order to achieve it. You're just looking for a little assistance and push to get past the bureaucratic red tape, not prepared to do so. Then, in those same conversations, you inform them that a CUC contract is coming due and they have an opportunity, but a very small window in which to make some objections, which they say is important to them, but they choose also to do nothing.
And you see,
you cannot make this up.
Well, that whole thing is what really perturbed me, right? Yeah, they didn't do anything about primitive, and that is,
Cayman need to do better. I'm just going to say it.
But I mean, not even giving up a chance, and then why they came on a chance to even say, well, maybe we can, new government can renegotiate or whatever the case may be. It's an issue.
Yeah.
Right. And these are the things that happen that make me scratch my head, and that's the things that makes me wonder. What are my children, my grandchildren? What are they going to face? Is this the continued leadership that we're going to have?
And this is where I want to highlight again, because I keep making a big deal about single-member constituencies. And there's some people that talk about accountability and the list goes on. I want you to understand. Hypothetically.
Some people. Me.
No. I'm not picking on you because I can call your name.
All right.
No, there's people who legitimately believe, genuinely believe that this improves accountability.
That it doesn't.
And let's be clear. If you have a minister, hypothetically, if you have a minister responsible for the area covering CUC, theoretically, he or she could get elected again, despite the fact that they totally missed the boat on this. Mm-hmm. As long as he or she goes ahead and does a couple of little things in their constituency.
Well, it's worse than that when I look
Ignore the national issues and just focus on your constituency and keep your seat safe. While in the meantime, the entire country is suffering.
So it gets worse than that in my head. And the reason why it gets worse than that is simple. So I think the only two constituencies that have 50-50 chances head-to-head would be Andre Banks' constituency and Joey's and Romelia's constituency. All the rest of them have more than two people running on my correct.
Mm-hmm.
Right? No.
Well, no, you also have the same thing in North Side.
The North Side, okay? So that's three places where it's really 50-50 chance on both sides, right? But all the rest of them, if one person get elected, more persons did not vote for them than actually got them in, Because if they vote for two other set of people and one person, maybe have three people within the constituency and one wins, the other two got votes also. So if you add those two votes up, more people didn't vote for the person that got in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's an issue for me, right? And the only way I believe that single-member constituencies could actually work and work properly is if you had a constituency scale voting process that they can put two people going head-to-head and that's it.
Well, that is why, by the way, single-member constituencies encourages a two-party system. But what I want you to focus on is because you have to understand, the typical politician is about getting reelected.
Yeah.
And what you have created as a system right now made it even more so that as long as I get some little thing to show in this little particular area here, I'm going to win my seat. I can go out and massage. I want you to understand, whatever it takes, I can massage 250 people and keep my seat while totally ignoring something like this on a big national issue. And in fact, in some instances, dealing with the national issue could hurt your chances of getting elected in the single-member constituency. That was what happened even during our group when we had to deal with the dump. Because there were persons who were not going to support the dump because it's going to go in my constituency, and I'm going to lose the seat, even though nationally it's something good for the country.
So let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Now, the single member, if my memory serves me correctly, I told you I was old, right? So if my memory serves me correctly, right? The single member referendum failed.
The single member constituency referendum?
Yeah, that failed, you know. When it was put forward by McKeever Bush, it was put forward in his term. Remember, they failed.
It was put forward in a term, yeah?
Yeah, and the referendum failed because at the time, if I remember correctly, McKeever told everybody stay home is a no vote. So some people didn't go out to vote because that's what was on the paper. So when they did it, the referendum actually failed, and then the then PPM put it in place by some loophole, if I remember correctly.
Well,
I can look at it.
I don't recall it that way. To be honest with you, I would have to think about it a little bit more. But I was under the impression that we definitely tried to encourage persons not to support single member constituency.
And they didn't.
But I believe, and I know the same band of merry men, some of them were the same ones anti-Cruz, were definitely pushing it. And to me, it passed.
But no, it actually failed at the polls.
I'm going to look it up.
Look it up, but it actually failed. I mean, you can probably Google it right now. It actually failed at the polls.
Either way, I know we have it now.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to look into that, too, because I have to take Ellio's position. I don't think you're 100% accurate on that, but we could be wrong, and we will look it up. But I want to say where you were absolutely 100% correct on, and that was going back to 2021. It wasn't a question of those who voted perhaps being responsible for the government that we got, but largely the 1/4 of all the voters in general who chose to take the holiday but not vote. Over 6,000 people in this country were registered in 2021 and chose to take the public holiday but not going to vote. But I say, when I take into consideration issues like the one that you are bringing to light here today, I can see how easy it is to understand why the voter in this country have become disenfranchised with the leadership that we have gained so far. Because here we are, a brand new, innovative idea for farming that could grow produce that we import from someone else, growing someone else's economy, we could bring that home. It is in the hands of Caymanians, therefore we can have food security year-round. And when we look at the whole aspirations of renewable energy, but the realities of the status quo, we have no desire to see things change, least of which as it comes down to utility costs, least of which when it comes down to a move towards renewable energy, whether it be 2035 or 2047, because we're never going to get there. And these are the questions that voters really have to keep into consideration, especially now that it is election campaign time. Don't just believe your politicians who say, we're going to make this better, we're going to make that better. Ask them how. Ask them to spell it out to you. Because if they cannot do that, then I would put it to you, as history is our teacher, it's easy to speak out of both sides of your mouth. Mr. Lawrence, I want to thank you for the time you have given us, the information you've shared with us. I hope you and your partners don't get discouraged. Maybe the day will come where you'll get a government that is enlightened enough to see the vision that you have and embrace it where others have failed. But in the time that we have left, I want to give you an opportunity for some closing remarks.
Well, thank you for having me, both you and Ellio, and thank you for the wire that came on, who guys were listening. It's a pleasure being here and to share my views and the aspirations that we have and things I'm perturbed about. At the end of the day, it's election time, and we simply need to look at track records of people to forget about the hams and the chickens and the street lights and the speed bumps. Let's look at the true meaningfulness of what was put in place and what can be put in place, and are they the right people for the job? And that's literally what has to be asked. Could they provide something for the future, for your children, for your grandchildren? At the end of the day, that is what needs to be looked at. Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, let me just say, Mr. Lawrence, first of all, you have enlightened us on many different things today. And let me just say that further enlightenment, you would like this one, because I am sticking to the truth, which you are correct. According to this trusted one here, the referendum on single-member constituencies, SMCs, in the Cayman Islands was held on July 18, 2012. The proposal sought to introduce single-member electoral districts with one elected representative per constituency. The referendum did not pass.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, you can. I'm gonna sing it for you because you are correct. At the end of the day, evidence-based is how we should make the decisions, and I am enlightened. Enlightenedly reminded, educating, enlightening, and elevating the public. The referendum did not pass because it failed to meet the required threshold. While a majority of those who voted supported the change, the Cayman Islands Constitution required a majority of the electorate, more than 50% of all registered voters, for the referendum to be binding. The turnout was too low to meet this requirement. Despite the referendum's failure, the government later implemented single-member constituencies for the 2017 general election through legislative changes.
That was a PPM that did that, and that's why we end up with what we have right now.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Again, I'm sure all reminded of the past, historically educated, enlightened, and elevated. Thank you very much for the enlightenment today on a myriad of different issues. And of course, I think, again, I want to stress to the public, I think what this gentleman has said today in terms of his efforts with food security and understanding the impediments that he has faced and the lack of support for the government, unfortunately, disgustingly, helps us to understand better why there's so many Caymanians that want to leave the country, seeing that you've had a government, and in this particular case, inclusive of the opposition, that has failed to miss the boat in terms of triggering something for CUC negotiations. Completely appalling. Thank you all very much for listening to Kramer for Straight Talk with your host, Austin Harris, myself, Ellio Salmon. See you tomorrow right here on Bobo 103.1.
The BBC on Bobo. This is the BBC World Service. Across Cayman on Bobo FM.